Hello, everybody. Welcome to Breaking the Silence, a podcast by Quest Pro Women Foundation. This is a Pan-African podcast dedicated to illuminating the pressing issue of sexual gender-based violence and amplifying the voices of sexual and gender diverse individuals. My name is Samantha, your host, and together we'll explore the complex landscape of sexual gender-based violence across Africa, delve into the intersectionality of these experiences, and foster meaningful dialogue towards empowerment and change. Join us as we break the silence and champion the rights and dignity of all. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Breaking the Silence. Today we have in the Pride episode, and I feel like there's no other way to have a Pride episode than going back to the actual beginning of Pride. And so today we're going to be focusing on the role transgender women played in igniting the movement. We'll look at the courageous actions of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, just not looking at them as in getting into their history, but understanding the role it was played, especially since we all know that Pride started in the Stonewall Riots and, the subsequent fights that later gave birth to the LGBTQ movement and then the letters that have added annually. This perspective is important, especially looking at Uganda or even Africa, because we have the same kind of tapestry across the continent around transgender women. Consider Uganda in context where the anti-homosexuality act has created a hostile environment. We want to look at, first of all, honoring the legacy of transgender pioneers and reflect on what their bravery means for the ongoing struggle for rights and acceptance in Africa. And also, so join us to explore the past, the present, and maybe forge ways for the future through the lens of transgender advocacy and resilience. Happy Pride!
Happy Pride!
Happy Pride!
Yeah! So, I'd love to introduce, I have three amazing women with me. And I just let them talk about themselves, just your name, your favorite thing to do, and if you were a closet item, what would you do?
Thank you so much, Samantha and everyone. So, my name is Mona Lisa Akintole. I believe I'm an activist, a transgender women's rights activist. Yeah. Back to your questions. What do I want to do? I love swimming of late. I'm doing it religiously because it kind of like refreshes my body and makes me feel new and energized. If I were a closet item, I think I would be. Okay, shoes can be in the closet as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so I would be shoes. Why? Why? Because I feel like for me, shoes, especially like the platform boots kinds of shoes, make me feel empowered, make me stand out and bold and all these beautiful things that I want to be. So I think I would be that.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Avery Nakabani. So I'm a writer, so most of my work is in the work I do, and my main focus is increasing transgender stories depicting transgender women and kind of showing off different facets. And I would say personally, I feel like it's very hard to find good trans representation, and in that case, I was as well in the same vein. It's very hard to find African trans representation because, like, I feel like right now it's just queer representation in Africa has just started, and I feel like right now we're going to be put in a place that is where we have to wait, and mostly men loving men relationships are the ones that are mostly going to get depicted the most, and so I just kind of like I want to contribute to the depiction of our stories and telling our stories from our perspective, and also to also recontextualize our existence away from the Western perspective, because like we can't relate entirely to their stories because there are some aspects that are very personal to us and very cultural to us. So that's my main goal with with my art. And I would say for a clothing item, I would say a ball gown, like Disney-esque, and because it when it enters the room, it turns head. That's the main thing I would say. Like I feel like that at times when I enter a room, I feel like a lot of eyes are on me. Yeah, so I feel like that's the best representation of myself. So yeah.
One of my favorite things about you is your hair flip. No one can do that flip. It's not. It features your
My what?
personality. Your hair flip.
It's my oh, but I remember my locks. So right now I'm working like a fro at the moment.
That's
So
your hair.
yeah. No,
Oh,
I removed my locks. I can't cut my
oh,
hair. I feel
oh,
like
oh.
that would.
They were installs. They didn't look like installs.
Yeah, I had them, and then I feel like I just wanted a revamp. But I think it's on my afro at the feminist retreat. I had an afro. I think you saw me.
Mm. So we're
Yeah.
talking about pride, and just what do any of us know about pride? What do any of us know about the history of pride?
Um,
Of
I,
pride.
I think for me, pride means so many things to different people. And when we speak about the history, everybody would sort of give you like from their own perspective on what they had or what they think stood out for them when it comes to the history of pride. But for me, basically, I want to say that pride was um, something that was birthed out of the LGBTI community at that time. I can't be very particular about the years. For them, it was like a pushback on on sort of the degrading treatment that they were receiving at that time. We saw that in around 1969 or 1968, being black and being trans and being all these acronyms in the LGBTIQ community sort of pushed people to the margins, and it went on and unquestioned, unanswered, and back then the community was more of like complying to the inhuman treatment that they were receiving at that time. So, but then when it comes to 1969, um, where for me the history of pride then begins is around the Stonewall riots. And so the police comes into this Stonewall Inn where different communities would meet and sort of have a community, an expression of sort, and have a space to be. And then he brings in a search warrant to say you are not authorized to be here, to be able to sell alcohol to the community, because you don't even have that warrant that guarantees you the right to do sell the alcohol. And so, as police being police, thought that these people would be very compliant, because back then in history, in like 1968, when this stuff would happen, like the LGBTQ community would just comply and be the yes men or the yes women at that time. But then they were like, enough is enough. And so then when this particular police raid happens at Stonewall, the community didn't want to take shit anymore. So they retaliated, they fought back. And then for me, that is when the birthing of pride, I think, comes in at a later stage. When the community at that time were like, we have had enough of the violations, of the discrimination, of the sidelining, of the marginalization that used to happen at that time. So to be able to push back and say, we are full human beings and you cannot continue to treat us like shit. So we are fighting back for us to have that visibility, to have that voice, and to just empower ourselves to be part of spaces where we as a community feel loved, feel energized, and we are ourselves. And no wonder we see the Sylvia Rivera's coming on board, and Marsha P. Johnson, and also somebody that is always downplayed when it comes to this the rioting was Miss Major Griffin Gracie, who I found very a very powerful and vocal person when it comes to speaking around the violations that she had faced a long time ago because of being this particular kind of woman. And for me, when she was able to then reiterate like the rest did, I find her way of reiterating that speaks more to us as a community now, to say that sometimes they will not believe you and your whole instance is demeaned and you are sort of not seen as a human being. And so to do away with that, she had to then also fight back. And I found that very empowering. And so for me, pride means the fighting back that our community has had to deal with ever since that time. And so for me, that the history of pride also reminds me of as us as a community not being able to take shit anymore from anyone that wants to oppress, violate, and wanting to extinguish us from existing. And yet we have always been around.
Mm. Thank you so much, Mona, for that crash course into the Stonewall. Avery, is there anything you want to add to pride
Yeah,
history?
yeah, I'll say to me what pride means is resistance, and
Mm,
because like the community had reached a point of frustration where it's enough is enough, and it takes a whole lot of bravery to reject abuse and
mm,
mistreatment, because it and I kind of commend the people and this, and also how the navigation of pride and understanding pride is not about assimilation. The pride it's not about assimilation, because like before the first Pride March, there's the story of like the Mattachine Society and Masha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, like clocking in
mm,
early before the start of the Pride, because like the Mattachine Society was only including mostly gay men, because to in order for them to be accepted, they wanted the society for them to see them in a very
mm,
heteronormative lens and not like, well, there's gender expanse and gender queer people were very much outcast of the society, and they were like freedom, because like you cannot have freedom for one and not look out for everyone. So kind of us kind of standing on business, I would say, and saying that
mm,
them standing on business saying like let's arrive at the thing at least so that yeah, and also when even when they manage to make leeways and trying to for liberation, and it was mostly
mm,
for cis gay men and lesbian women, and Celia Rivera reached a point of frustration, because I'm sure a lot of people have seen that speech whereby she stood up and said, "Well, I've been jailed, I've been beaten, I've been," and like that kind of frustration
mm,
whereby she's because like I understand her frustration, because like the movement she has worked so hard to build has been bastardized into this
mm,
very commercial cash cow, and also only adhering to one sector of the community and leaving out everyone else. But like even at that point, she had reached a point to frustration that she had to step away from activism until
mm,
one of her friends died. One of her friends died,
mm,
and like she, and also even prior to her death, like in I think in the early 2000s, she was kind of expressing
mm. Also
her
died in 2002.
yeah, yeah, she expressed her frustration on like on how everyone's managing and how pride has become has not it's not has become less about like, resistance, and especially in this very dire time whereby rights have been revoked here and there. And right now, I'm not saying like remove the celebration of how far we have come, but at the same time, it's very right now as trans people right now we're in the bottom of the totem pole, and I feel like a lot of people are not paying attention, because like
Mm,
if they finish us off first, they will it will go on and continue revoking other rights, because I feel like pride is also community with your fellow peers, because I feel like there's a lot of infighting, especially
mm,
we have a lot of people do not who do who are right now always wanting to remove the T the out of the
yeah,
acronym and
yeah.
always. So, and also kind of it's an insult because I feel like I just when I learn about Silver River and her frustration, especially with gaming and it's really gaming. She had a very intense hate. She had a lot of spite towards gaming because like they're the ones feel like she received a lot of havoc from them and also pushback. And when she's trying to better the community for them, they are only self-seeking for their own rights and not for the whole community. And I feel like as a community, we need to we can't fight for liberation if all of us are not seeing going actually aiming for the same goal because all these things are very interconnected and also because like recently on Twitter was it some man saying like this woman needs to be arrested for cutting her hair, kind of like looking into like trans liberation or what? Because I feel like for a lot of people, it kind of represents the choice of defining your own version of how you exist into this world, and like if people are now feel like if people do not subscribe into trans liberation, I feel like
Thank you so much, Avery and Mona, for that history. Because one of the things that fascinated me the most, I think one of the things that I find the most fascinating about the LGBTQ movement is the fact that it was begun by black trans women.
Mm,
Okay, no, okay, trans women of color, including Rivera. I think Rivera
yeah.
is from, yeah. It's just like, and looking towards the now where we are going. Like Avery mentioned that to think that now there are movements that do not want to speak of or even be affiliated to the fact that they work with transgender persons, and it's very I can't I don't understand it because then that just shows somebody that doesn't know their history. It just shows a group of people that don't understand where this fight is coming from.
Mm,
When you gave us the beginning of Pride and the journey and the fight and how and how what made those women push back at Stonewall. I just wanted to find I want to tell me about your experience organizing in Uganda right now as a transgender woman. What does that look like?
yeah. Organizing as a trans woman in Uganda, I want to say that one is that there's the privilege that social media has given to us that run organizations, belong to organizations, and sort of push back in ways that people back then maybe didn't have an opportunity to because then internet or technology wasn't really vast as it is today. So organizing today could be as easy as me sitting back at my home and organizing a campaign against something like, let's say, trans women are done and dusted with being treated like shit when we are accessing medical care or health treatment at the facilities, and then you can have that X what we okay the tweet going viral and donors are able to pick up on that and then are able to support around that work of um, funding within those particular within those particular within that particular sector of health. And then you see change coming up at a later stage where there's little over acceptance, there's more embracing of diversity. So that is one thing. And then also being very cognizant of the fact that organizing today also comes with its very challenges because one, I like how Every has put it that even in 2024, we still have to assert our way within the LGBTQI acronym. Yeah. There's some community members, and I'll be very specific, gay men that feel like the T should be out of the LGBTI blah 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 acronym because then it signals violence for them because as transgender persons we are more visible. That means that even a gay bottom that is not necessarily trans could be targeted. Yeah, so they're always looking for ways to just push us out. of the acronym, and that signals marginalization within a community that is already marginalized. So then, how do we speak of community building, community engagement, solidarity, if we continuously also within our movements continue to sideline and push other people to the margins who we think shouldn't belong? And so then that makes organizing difficult, because then we know at times that the way we receive these funds and the resources that we get is through the networking that the donor world wants to see us be at one with each other and sort of have this love. And I put it in quotes here because sometimes it's that fake love that we have to push forward for us to gain certain things. And it's not necessarily that they want us in these spaces. It's not necessarily that they want to address issues of transgender persons, because it, it's still back in 2024. You have gay men say trans women are not women enough. And I'm like, okay, then what is your description of a real woman? And then they will go on to define for you a woman with a vagina, to say that, okay, maybe if you transitioned and looked like Caitlyn Jenner, then maybe we would consider you as woman enough. And then they forget that not everybody is placed at that seat of privilege, of opportunity, of accessibility, of this kind of resources to make you that woman that they want you to be. Or have you transitioned to be on hormones, and you have the boobs, and your body is shaped in a particular way for you to be able to be um belonging to that community? So then it makes organizing for me very hard, because we have communities that still now do not believe that actually trans women are women. So then, how do you then provide services, extend love, solidarity to a community that you do not believe in yourself, and yet you are also coming from that community of marginalization because you're a gay black man or you're a gay person? It's not like your privilege is privilege up there. You are also having to deal with the intersectionalities that come with you being gay, black, not so well educated, and all these things that we need to battle and tackle in our daily lives. So for me, that makes organizing very hard in its essence. And it takes away from when we speak about organizing, what do we actually mean? Do we say we organize for only people that are coming from the Kampala region, which is the central region, and then we leave out transgender persons that belong to rural areas? So we never have those voices in the room. What are their needs? Do we speak to their context? Or when we are organizing back in Kampala, I remember when I belonged to a transgender organization and I was doing programming work there, we would always settle and deploy our sort of advocacy around transgender persons that were in the central region, and forget the context and the lived realities of transgender persons that traversed and are not part of the central context. So then their voices were never captured. And then that for me was very problematic in sort of what do we mean when we are saying organizing and building a movement. And so to have this nuance and have a further lens of scrutinizing and saying, no, yes, okay, there are transgender persons like me, but then I need to go a step further and assess what are their needs, basing on the context that they are placed in and the situation that they're living in right now. How best do we get to serve them? And how do we have them on the table for them to actually bring out their issues? And then so for that then to come out and have those voices in the room to speak for themselves, because we continuously say as a community, oh, I'm the voice of the voiceless. And I'm like, no, hell no. You are not a voice for anybody. These are people that when you give them an opportunity to speak, they'll voice for themselves. And I think within the feminist movement, we have coined something to say there's nobody that is voiceless. It's just that people have decided who gets to have the mic, to have their voices amplified. So then to have people in the room to also speak to their own needs and realities is very important when it comes to movement building. And that can't be downplayed. So for me, I sort of think about it in that kind of light. Yeah.
Okay. That's a very holistic and organization way to think at it, to look at it. Maybe I would love for you to answer this question, but from the perspective of just a transgender person that just wants to exist, in Uganda. What is that context like? What is the context in Uganda right now? The realities of transgender women.
Okay. The context for transgender women in Uganda, I would say it's depending. Okay, depending if you're a class transgender woman or or you're not. And normally, tipping on the have-nots is you have a different way of navigating the thing. Because let's say, I would say,
Madam, what are the have and the have nots? This is not very interesting.
no, pardon?
What do you mean by the have nots?
Okay, like I would say lower class. I would say the ones who stay in group homes and what. Okay, who are not financially able to sustain themselves, or have resort to, let's say, sex work to facilitate. Because I have met a different types of, I've a couple of trans women and kind of seeing their very different experiences. Because I would say a lot of worry, because depending on if you're out and open, let's say on social media, and also out if you're very personal with it, because like you navigate it differently, and you have to, well, like you have a lot, well, there's a lot of family contention within, because like this is your fundamentally you don't know how to that's how to grasp your identity to people, and you try to, yeah, because it's been in Uganda, because you don't know how to navigate you don't know how to navigate things unless you're in a very you want to be secure and be secure. You try to be secure as possible, because um what can I say? So let me find the point. You have to be very secure in where you are, and you have the choices are very limited, because like to me, like let's say from my perspective, I would say I do not go for a lot of opportunities, because I do not want to. You don't know why you don't want to. Do I go into this space whereby my treatment will be very slighted and very, and then because like even jobs, like you're turned down, like there's a potentiality of we're heavily differentialized, and there are not very opportunities whereby they are very open to taking us, and we have to be very whereby these are haves and have nots comes into play. Where let's say Cleopatra Campbell, where she's a class trans woman, whereby she's on the outside, whereby she has been able to afford certain luxuries within her transition, while let's say compared to the have-nots, and where you have to, of course, like I've seen a lot of trans girls whereby they say they have to go for hormone therapy, because it's a very, especially with the prices and they're over fluctuating, and it's very frustrating, because especially with the climate, and also really it's navigating it, trying to navigate the world, especially in those early parts of the transition, the early parts of the transition, and and there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of, also within the trans community, I feel like there's a lot of infighting in itself, because especially I would say mostly amongst trans women, because I've met some very, very catty trans women, and it's like, I feel like there's a measure of on presentation. They worry about like the concept of like being disassuming, and normally someone is like, if I'm hanging out with you on my big clock and everything, and kind of that situation of you can't form a community whereby everyone is sticking up for themselves and also trying to protect themselves from violence. Yeah, because it's let's say you, when in public, because a lot of approaches. I've seen a lot of people trying to navigate that situation, because like you have to contend on like how to present yourself. Yeah, I would say that's the situation from the observations I've seen around.
So, I guess my next question would be: first of all, I love the way that you both explored the tapestry, but I think I would love to get more into, has the Anti-Homosexuality Act, or how has that affected trans organizing in Uganda right now? Because the legislators will argue and say that the law does not criminalize identity, you know. So how has that affected, first of all, not just organizing, but also trans existence ever since? And for especially in the fact that the transgender community is again the leaders that you are, and it's not because you're here, but even just to look at HIV programming and how transgender people had actually gotten themselves accepted by the national HIV programming, and were part of the classification forms by the government issued, and you could actually say you were a transgender person and be treated in any government hospital and be classified as transgender. And so the strides have really been there. But how has this Anti-Homosexuality Act, has it first of all has it affected, and Mona, you answer from organizing, and Avery, you answer from existence, of transgender persons in Uganda at all?
Mhm. Well, Samantha, this is a very nice question. And yes, the Anti-Homosexuality Act has done more harm than good. I just remembered my school, my school word. What
Your
did we call it?
debate.
Debate. It has done more harm than good. And
Mm,
and I think for me, speaking from a space of where I was part of the organizing structure, and doing this work of pushing back and advocating, speaking out, and saying we can't continue to say that certain populations within our society cannot simply exist because they are different.
mm,
And then in 2023, you have our parliamentarians sitting very, very comfortably in their um, well aerated parliament rooms and floors, and saying, um, we are passing this bill, and it's not really targeting identity, but we just want to curb and sort of drawing from the moral compass. We want to keep people moral, and they do not have to deviate and go against that which is normal. And so that is very problematic when we also look at it in terms of how then we organize. Because when that law passed, the bill that later became a law passed, is we
mm,
saw numbers of people that were, one, you spoke of, like, let me just give an example of, in the HIV world, we had transgender persons not wanting to come out to seek services anymore, because then you would not separate the identity from the person that has come to seek a service. Yeah,
mm,
you will not say, yes, Mona Lisa has gone to MAPI, and
mm,
now that they are this facility, they are just a man. And so their transness and whatever they believe in vanishes because they're at the facility. And then how does a person at the facility get to respond to my needs as a transgender person and give me the right support and medication and care, and sort of this conversation, this candid and honest conversation around how do you want to improve your life, and being very clear and steady to say that you're a transgender person, which they couldn't do. Yeah.
mm,
And so that meant that people that had become empowered the transgender persons that were empowered, that would speak out, that they would go to seek services, then also had to go back in hiding. They shunned away from seeking these services, and that is very problematic. And for me, it is a worry for our government to say that the law hasn't done so much harm because we don't see people coming out to report. But then you live in a system that does not even give you a redress mechanism. When you go to the police or anywhere else, they would simply say, if you are connected to this LGBTI thing, I don't think you're safe actually to also speak out about that. Because then there would be rehabilitation waiting for you. And for me, that is where the problem is, for governments to be very, I don't want to seem very, I'm trying to find a kind word. They are not open to the openness and the realities of people that are different within the communities. And no wonder this law, the AHA, further entrenches us and pushes us away from seeking any sort of service. And those that are able to is what Avery calls the haves. And those that don't have are the have-nots in the society. And many of us belong to the have-nots. Because when we speak of a notion of, oh, you belong to the LGBTI community, you have the money. And I'm always saying, where is the money? Because we have a community that actually also can't have basic needs: food, medication, where to sleep, what we call shelter. And so this is a community that your father entrenching to say, for you, you will not leave no matter the means, and you've put a law to actually achieve that. So you're leaving us out. So then for me, then and then I'm trying to connect it to now how pride for me then seems in 2024. Yeah. That I have pride is a beautiful thing, and I love the history because I've read about the history. But in 2024, I am sort of, let me use the word, sort of drawing closer to hopelessness, but then I'm not hopeless. Yeah. That there is hope in the future, but I don't seem to see it yet. Because when you're walking 10 strides and then you're pushed back 8 strides, it means that your progress is slow. And I like the way you said it, that yes, before we were going to these meetings with the Uganda AIDS Commission, would sit on AIDS Commission boards and trans issues were amplified. But now that doesn't happen anymore. We only come on those tables for tokenism. They just want to tick the boxes. Affirmative action, tokenism, because they want to say we had 2 transgender persons in this particular meeting for them to receive the funding. So are you really well represented in that room where you are to speak for yourself? Or you're in the room because they want you to be in a room to fill registration sheets, get transport refund, and go back home. When they receive the funding, there's nothing that will be done when it comes to your community. And so for me, that is where now my pride sort of leads my body to say, what are we doing wrong? Yeah. And so then pride then means for me, it reminds me of the constant need for us to to push back, however draining that could be, because it's really draining work. But then we can't sit back and say we shan't do anything because we are criminalized. Yeah. This criminalization will not go away being silenced. And I think it's still another, because I'm a feminist, your silence will not save you. I think those were words from Bell Hooks, if I'm not mistaken. And we are constantly having to do that, to speak back, to push back, and see how we assert ourselves within our society that seeks to do away with us, to erase us. So from an organization perspective, is to say that yes, this, even the simple fact that when the law was passed, before I forget and then pass on the mic, is to say that my organization, where I was coming from, we were interrogated, and our permit our permits were revoked. Yeah, I think that's the right word. And they called back the permits. How did you get the permits? They froze our bank accounts. So then you're not able to get the funds that help you to do the work that you do within the organization, because we know that a majority of our money comes from the funding entities, the funding world. So then when you clamp down on an organization that receives funding through donors, and donors have also these rules around how they want you to receive their money, be registered, this patriarchal thing of be registered before we give you the money. Yeah.
In a system
Be
that doesn't
known.
even recognize you. Yeah.
In a system that doesn't recognize it, because we are speaking of criminalization in 2023 last year, which is now moving on because the law is still present, to say that we will not give you the monies until you also are part of a system where you are acknowledged of existing. But we know very well you cannot exist within a structure, a system that seeks to do away with you. And that began with us as an organization to say, we are calling back your permits because we don't know the work that you're doing at Transgender Equality Uganda. And so that meant that the programming that we had for our members was affected. So I could go on and on, but then just to give an opportunity to also another person to speak, for me is very important. And yeah, maybe I will pitch onto that to say more if
Today
I
is
have
30
something.
minutes later.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, yeah. So thank you so much, Mona. It's very before um of every, just to even think about the power dynamics, who holds the power, who controls the power,
Mm.
and to know that the power dynamics have been really rigged for sexual and gender minorities for a really long time. It's not, yeah. So every, just to has the, I love the fact that you have the perspective of, I've learned a word, the haves and the have nots. That was a series sometime on TV when I was growing up. I remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, anyway,
I
yeah,
know the theory.
yeah, it's a series. And so just to listen from that
Yeah,
perspective of how was the AHA affected, regular, day to day person, not an organizer.
I would say it kind of limits your participation in daily life. I would say that's the main thing, because like you become very aware of your existence, and you just want to know, like, you look, okay, like, it puts you in a sense of danger, because like you look left and right, and you're like, am I being clocked? Am I just, is someone just admiring, or like, possibly, because like you don't like, you just don't, you have to be very careful in the spaces you try to, because you try to exist in, because like you want to make sure that in a situation, let's say you cannot, let's say if you're, let's say with, as a transgender woman, you have to be like, let's say you have to wear a very, let's say a more androgynous style, whereby you are not implicated on anyone saying something, because like you can't do yourself, and so that anyone, so that no one, in case you're clocked and you're like, you are not put in that position of whereby someone can apprehend you, whereby you have plausible deniability at all time. So, and also, let's say walking, let's say also limiting your movement, because limiting your movement, and also also you can't use public transportation anymore, because like personally, it's just something I had to let go of, especially as I was getting further into my transition, because I cannot, unless I'm with someone, I cannot like deliberately go out of my way like to but take public transportation. I have to like, even like, and also my mom, okay, like the way my mom treats my transition, okay, like she just chooses to be close her eyes and pretend like it's not happening. She doesn't know. I haven't told her, but she just pretends like this is something, like ignorance is bliss. So, but at the same time, she's also very aware of like the way my body has changed over these past 2 years. And she's like, because like one time I was in shorts that like mid thigh, and she was like, "You're going out like that? Like, don't you have something else? Don't you have something else to wear?" And she was very much aware, like, it's like trying to like, in a way, like, even though she's not saying it, she just kind of aware of the situation. Like, she doesn't want, because like every time. but like she does it also like even like when I need transportation too. Just when I was just a that prior, she would be like, "Why don't you take a taxi right now?" Which is like very much full for me to avoiding public transportation
Mm.
because aware because like you do not engage in life the way you used because like you have to be very aware of the spaces you enter. You have to make sure that you are safe at all times, and
Mm.
also someone can always track you in case something happens because like you just can't go out and also it limits how much you can do. Also like prospects able trying to let's say have some mobility in let's say in terms of monetary your monetary status, you can't do
Mm.
much because like you have to be very particular about the jobs you apply for, whereby you have to
Mm.
because like most like let's say in Uganda, you can't apply for a corporate job and like you have to contend with like do I go in this place where I'm misgendered and dead named
Mm.
or protect my peace and because like you're put in that position. But like even even the minimum wage jobs you can't at times you can't get those jobs because you look because like other people will look at you and you're like you might cause issues in this establishment because like you're denied employment and on a
Mm.
number of cases. So you have to look. It's very hard to find even spaces of where well, to be able to find yourself. So basically, that's where I feel like the AHA has affected, and that's the main thing. Like the way you navigate public life becomes very harsh, and you become more conscious about your existence, and you question it. It's a very because that's like the intention of that bill. Because I feel like compared to let's say uh gay, bisexual, lesbian, for them, I feel like they have a way of they can navigate things because I just like in presentation, it's something you can easily adjust. But
Mm.
I feel like as trans people, you can't because like your body has had modifications on it,
Mm.
and so it's very you do not know how you have to be aware of how you exist in spaces. Yeah,
Mm.
that's what
Okay,
I'd
okay.
say.
It's very interesting. And I think for me, the thing that people need to understand and say all the policies, all the laws, but most of the research that, for example, the recent SRT report by the SRT team from Uganda shows that 95.4% of violations towards sexual and gender minorities are by vigilante groups. Only is it 5.6%? Was 4.6% could be attributed to state actors or what? So now, how are we combating the public? What is the plan? I look at countries that have accepting laws. For example, I look at South Africa. Gender diverse persons are still being they're still being attacked and affected, even though they've had inclusive laws on paper. So it goes back to how do we combat the attitudes of the community. And before we close, that just as we go, it's Pride, you know, and so just it's so sad that we cannot organize Pride as Uganda. But just one thing that you would love the transgender community to know for Pride, and just like a very short but amazing Pride message, not to despair, not to lose hope as we are into this Pride month. And anybody can, I think Mona, they've been following a sort of order. So yeah, Mona.
Okay, madam, the order. Okay. Um. So to my trans folks out there, and I'm sorry, I have to be very particular to the trans folks because they're dear to my heart. Yeah, but I love the entire
Mm,
LGBTIQ spectrum. Is to
mm,
say that you. I know these words come off as cliche or as basic, but what's like you matter.
mm,
Um, your voice counts. Your lived experience is your experience, and nobody can take that away from you. And that's where you should draw your pride from. So for me, for Pride, I'm just continuing to call on the trans community to not lose hope, to have faith in the possibilities of there'll be a better tomorrow for us to live and thrive and be our full authentic selves. And so that resilience and that zeal to want to live in that kind of utopia is for us not to give up on hope. And so for me, my message for Pride 2024 is to say, we matter, your voices count, don't lose hope. I love you. I love you, even in the time where you feel like there's nobody that is rooting for you, supports you, loves you, and all these amazing things that we human beings clamor for, because everybody loves to be loved. I am here for you, and I love you, I see you, I appreciate you. So yeah, Samantha, that's it from me. Yeah.
So much. Thank you so much, Mona. Avery.
What I would say is my advice. I'd say to other trans people is find community. Like find it's very important because like in these very dire times you need it, and it doesn't matter even within our in communities in trans people. It's also very important to have other trans people to relate to because like there's a very particular experience within the community that you need someone to as a messaging board to understand what you're going through because and how to navigate it. It's a very cruel world that we're living in, and it's very important to have someone who can get you through it. And yeah, I would say as you're developing into your transness, I feel like grow a sense of love for it. And even though there are many detractors that are telling you to hold the contrary of that, but I feel like you have to hold your transness in. I would say you have to have a religious love for it. Just as you see that every religion out there, that is a sense praising their deities. I feel like that's a sense of love you have for yourself. You would have for your transness because it's your sense of idealization and your sense of self, and also a way of describing your existence is very pertinent to you. And this of a thing because you always want to strive for better for yourself and always wanting to find the best solutions for yourself because it's a very particular experience. It's a very liberating thing to choose yourself always and restructuring how you want everything for yourself. That's my message to other trans people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a very this. I wish this conversation could even actually be cited in a dissertation because it has history. It has so many things. It has lived realities. Thank you so much, both of you, for being women that know their shit, and the wish to like share it with the people. From me and from everybody at Breaking the Silence, happy Pride, everybody!
Happy Pride!
Happy Pride! Happy Pride!
And all those countries that are marching, please march for Uganda because we can't march for us.
Yes, we shall march for you.
Needed.
Yeah, Mona, march for us.
Yeah.
I shall. I will send you videos.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Breaking the Silence. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to take action and advocate for the rights and safety of sexual and gender diverse individuals across Africa. Remember, change begins with awareness, empathy, and collective effort. Be sure to subscribe and tune in for our next episode where we'll continue to explore the many facets of SGBV and work together towards a future free from violence and discrimination. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep breaking the silence.